Hey everyone, welcome to the Lotus Archives. This is going to be our first episode of this new podcast that me and my buddy Jack are doing. We are going to be focusing a little bit on Commander, the Magic the Gathering format. My name is Nick,
I am Jack.
and Jack, why don't you go ahead and we can start this thing off with a bang, and why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like Nick said, we are here to discuss Commander. We've got about 20 years of Magic the Gathering experience between the both of us. We've been playing for a very long time. I love Commander. It's probably one of the most fun formats out there, to be honest. It's easy to get into. There's a lot of, growth, and really you can kind of just do what you want with it for the most part. Every card is available, and there's a lot of creativity with it that you can do that I really
So,
enjoy.
Jack, what set block did you start playing with? And tell us a little bit about your history of playing here.
So so I started back in the Innistrad block is when I really got the kick of it, back in 2011 with like werewolves, vampires, the bloodthirst mechanic, all that kind of crazy stuff. A lot of dark gothic horror, which I love. And I knew about the game during the Duels of the Planeswalkers stuff, when like they really introduced Planeswalkers for the first time, like the year prior, which was just an incredible time to really start playing this game. And I started up in Legacy, which was, a lot of people will see it as kind of one of the more competitive
So, for
formats.
those that might be listening that are new and they only really either play Commander or they're just trying to get into the game, what exactly is Legacy?
So Legacy was like one of the earliest formats, along with like Vintage, Modern, Standard. It's one of the 60 card formats that, you can build up a 60 card deck. You can run four of any card, and you basically, try to. In Legacy, there are many different like staple decks, such as like combos, Storm, Control. My personal favorite was Dredge, where you would basically just try to put your entire deck into your graveyard and then go from there. Which a lot of people will say is, at the time it was considered not real Magic because you didn't use lands very much. You didn't really rely on a mana source of any kind. You kind of just dumped your whole deck into the graveyard and reanimated everything from there,
Okay.
which I thought
Yeah,
was
it
a
definitely
blast.
seems interesting. It's definitely a little bit different than what the format is today, especially with the Commander format. But
Oh yeah, Commander is. I mean, you can try to dredge in Commander. You can try to move some stuff from Legacy into Commander, but for the most part, Commander can be much more
yeah,
casual.
I mean, I know for me personally, I started off right in Amonkhet block right before Ixalan came out. So I'm a little bit newer to the game here. I started off with just kitchen table commander. At the time, I believe it was still being called Elder Dragon Highlander, and
Yep.
I I honestly didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I kind of just was throwing a bunch of 100 cards together and hope for the best. It wasn't until I met Jack and I started doing my own more research here that I really started to understand the nuances of certain play styles and certain decks. And my first deck, I want to say it was a Lazav deck from Ravnica, and it was pretty much just stealing other people's creatures, turning Lazav into those creatures. It was fun, but it was far, far from optimal. Um, the first set that really pushed me into the game, though, it definitely was Ixalan, and just dinosaurs, vampires, pirates. To me, that was awesome. That was the first set I really went out and I made it a point to buy certain cards and really start building my collection.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
Currently, right now, my favorite deck to play would probably be my Urtai deck. Um, it's I run my deck a little bit differently right now, and for those that don't know, Urtai is an Esper commander, and he My deck's focus is pretty much to get out as many zombie tokens as possible. And yeah, no one else is going to play Magic because I can sacrifice those zombies and counter spells. Jack, how about you? What's your favorite deck you're playing right now?
Oh my goodness, I have so many. Um, I mean, it was really tough to get into Commander for me at first and really build those decks. From coming from such a competitive format like such as Legacy, going to the big events I went to and really trying to build the decks to not always be so optimized. Having that past experience of, okay, when I build a deck, I have to build it according to Legacy standards to try to even compete in that style. So I ended up a lot of my favorite decks that I played today. I have at least a couple that I really love, such as my Elf deck, which and
Yeah, screw that deck. I I still remember the first time you brought that thing out. I think it was the first time we played together. And yeah.
yeah, for that was the very first deck we played with. Yeah, that it's actually more optimized now than it was back, if you can believe it or not. So for those who don't know, if you're familiar with Legacy in any way, there's the Legacy Elf combo deck, which basically just plays a bunch of dudes, things like Quirion Rangers that lets you, put a land back in your hand to untap elves. And they use things like Heritage Druid that taps a bunch of elves to make more mana. It's just a lot of mana dorks, like mana creatures that can tap for green and do more stuff. And you kind of just combo around with those until you get a giant Crater Hoof Behemoth that gives all your creatures plus X, where X is number of creatures you control, and it gives them trample. So you just make a massive board of elves, you drop down the big Crater Hoof, and you swing for game. So one of my favorite decks to play, and probably one of my most strongest decks right now, is a commander deck I built based around that strategy, where it's just Elf Ball. It's all these little elves. They come out, they make a bunch of mana. I get the Crater Hoof out, and I swing for game. I can usually do that nowadays. I've done it on turn one, or not turn one. I've done it with a single land in play, and by turn three.
Yeah, screw that deck. I still remember the first day that you frickin' came over and we sat at the table together.
Yep.
And I was playing most likely my Lazav deck or some janked up
You were playing, so I rewatched this video
dinosaur.
actually because our other buddy he recorded it, so I actually went back and rewatched our first match. And you were playing dinosaurs. He was
Yep.
playing some kind of Bosch Golem deck, and then the other guy that actually got me into, that got me there with you guys, he was playing some kind of Goblin thing.
Okay, yeah. That was my first iteration of my dinosaur deck too, I
Yeah.
think. I that thing wasn't even close to optimized. My land base was trash. I didn't know what I was doing. I want to say it was the first deck I truly built by myself. And looking back at it now, I don't know how I won any games with that deck.
Yeah, early dinosaurs was rough. Ixalan definitely gave them good support, but nowadays with the new Ixalan, there is so much more support out there for dinosaurs now. You can make that thing a powerhouse.
Oh my god. Like this last Ixalan set, I was so freaking excited for. Just more pirates, more dinosaurs, more vampires. Currently, I'm working on a new dinosaur deck, and I'm going to be basing it around Jurassic World, and I'm going to be using Blue and Will there. And
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great.
oh yeah, that's going to be a fun deck, and I'm planning on kind of blinging it out and only using Jurassic World styled lands and whatnot. I'm pretty excited for that. Jack, are you currently working on any builds right now?
So I did actually just spend a good few hours last night rebuilding um, an old deck of mine that I used to run a while back. So like I mentioned from my legacy days, I was a big fan of Dredge, right? So I wanted to incorporate that into a commander deck, and there are lots of good like Golgari, black green style commanders out there that you can build around with the graveyard and synergize with it.
Oh, without a
You
doubt.
got things like the Get Rog monster is fantastic. Even Gerard, the Golgari Lich,
Yep.
who just sacrifices creatures and deals damage
He's
and
definitely a
gets bigger
solid
with more
card.
things. He's great. My personal favorite, though, ever since she came out, has been Marin of Clan Neltoth.
Yeah. I mean,
So I'll,
Christ, that precon that she was in, that's
yeah,
still one of the best precons I've seen in a long time in terms of pure power.
yep. So I'll explain what she does here. Basically, so it's from the set where they had the experience counters, right? So for Marin, she's two colorless, black green, and whenever a creature dies, you get an experience counter, which already is like, okay, so I'm just gonna get experience all the times. You play like aristocrat style, which is basically sacking all your creatures to gain profit. And her main ability is that at the end of your turn, you bring a creature back to the field if its mana value is equal to or less than the number of experience counters you have. And if it's not, you put it back into your hand. So you just choose any creature in your yard, and you can either pop it back in your hand or you bring it right back into play. So I took that and put a bunch of dredge cards in there to just mill my deck out, which is basically just taking the top card of it, putting it all into the graveyard directly. Cards like there's one in there that's called Entomb, lets you go into your deck, take a creature, put it right into the yard, and Buried Alive lets you do it for three creatures. So the whole deck is just all about filling up the graveyard with as much value as possible, and then using things like Marin or Reanimate, which basically just bring them back into play.
Yeah, Marin is definitely a solid card. Graveyard mechanics aren't for everyone,
No, definitely
but
not.
so Jack, if you had to choose your favorite style of deck and your favorite color combinations, what would you say they are for you?
Man, I mean, I know I've been talking about Dredge a lot so far this morning, just because it's such a fun mechanic that I loved. But I also used to play a lot of blue, and I do a lot of combos. So there's like there's a set of like player types out there, right? Like there's your Timmies that like to smash with big giant creatures like dinosaurs and dragons and stuff like that. You got your Spikes that only play the top meta stuff that really just want to go in hard, get all the right stuff, play the top tier nonsense that's winning all the tournaments. And then there's folks like me who are called Johnny Combo players, and we just try to find all the synergies and all the crazy, combos that we can put into a deck to either go infinite with infinite card draw, infinite mana generation, infinite creatures, pumping them with 1/1 counters, that type of deal. And that's where I fall under. I played a lot of Storm when I was younger, which is basically casting a bunch of spells in quick succession to get out one big spell that just either wins you the game on the spot or can make a bunch of goblins. That's pretty much where I'm at. Every deck I run has at least 1 to 2 combos in it. Like the Dredge deck has a combo. I have an Artifact deck that has at least 3 combos in it. I enjoy that very much. What about you, Nick?
I mean, for me, I bounce back and forth. I play a lot of Esper, which I know you know.
Yep.
It for whatever reason, it seems like all my favorite commanders have been Esper commanders, and I've had to stop myself multiple times from building another Esper commander because I don't want a bunch of decks that all do the same thing. Um, for
It can be
me,
very strong.
yeah, and as you know, I've gotten fairly solid at building Esper style decks.
Oh, for
And
sure.
the biggest thing for me is I want to be able to have fun with the deck. I enjoy bouncing around to different play styles. I
Yep.
mean, as you know, I got my Miram deck, which I'm literally just pumping out as many freaking dragons as I can and rolling over people.
Oh, Miriam
And
is fantastic.
I can do that consistently with her. She's probably one of my favorite decks that I have. But I also have some decks that are a little out there that right now they don't really have a main focus on what I exactly want to do. And I'm in the process of trying to focus it down and really dig in and figure that out. I mean, I got decks like my Reaper King deck, which originally was build as many Reaper Kings as possible. And it ended up becoming tiresome because you play it the same way every single time. Build out as many freaking Reaper Kings as you can. Because for those that don't know, Reaper King, essentially, whenever I'll pull it up right now. That way I can read off the exact card you guys instead of from memory. It's been a while for me. Reaper King is other scarecrow creatures you control get +1/+1. And the big thing was whenever another scarecrow enters the battlefield under your control, destroy target permanent. So
Very
essentially,
nasty.
yeah. So essentially, that build was I'm going to get out as many scarecrows as I can, scarecrows, clones, and somehow it evolved into I'm just going to find a way to get as many Reaper Kings out there as I possibly can before I start unleashing tokens and stuff like that. That way I'm stacking those triggers.
Right, yeah, it's an incredible powerhouse. I've played against a few Scarecrow decks, and they can be very scary.
Yeah. It got to the
Scarecrows are
point,
scary.
yes, they are. It got to the point for me in the play group that I was playing with a lot of the time back at that point. The deck one was just way too powerful compared to the play group I was playing with. And I think I built that deck, God, almost 6, 7 years ago now. I built it just
Mm,
after Ixalan dropped. It was one of the second or third decks that I actually built. And back then, the power curve, it was, you were getting weaker decks. And that was considered a high tier deck. And I had buddies playing some precons that were lightly modified and they couldn't keep up. And I think that was my biggest issue with the play group I was in at the time is some of them weren't willing to jump to that next level and start upgrading their decks. And that's when I started to look into the competitive EDH side. And as soon as I did that, I realized that's not for me because those decks are even more one trick ponies, if I
yeah.
may. And all the games are essentially the same. You're getting the same couple commanders every single pod. Um, but if we're
Yeah,
talking, yeah,
yeah, for sure.
but if we're talking favorite play styles, I like fucking with people, if I'm being honest. And not necessarily countering counter spells and stuff like that. I like screwing with people and how they play the game and forcing them to play how I want them to play. Whether
So a
that,
control in a sense then, like
yes,
controlling the board and
exactly.
controlling so like taxing almost.
Exactly. So a lot of
Okay.
times you'll see me play um more of a stacks style deck, especially if the games I've been playing I wasn't doing so good because either I was not drawing the right cards or
Yep.
my opponents were playing really well. At that point, I'll bring out my stack style decks.
So
And
what is that stacks strategy then? Why don't you delve into that? Tell us about your stacks strategy.
make it simple. You can't play the game, but I can. Um, so with stacks, a lot of people hate stacks,
Oh
and
yeah.
when we say stacks, it is spelled STAX. And you got cards. It's, I mean, Derevi, I want to say she was one of the first commanders that I saw that kind of got me interested in stacks. I mean, you got
Yep.
Derevi. She was an early commander that came out in a precon, and
So what
she's a
made her good for
oh
stacks?
yeah, she's a 2/3 flying, and whenever she enters the battlefield, a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, and you may tap or untap a target permanent. But
Mhm.
her big thing was she got around commander tax,
Yep.
and you could just tap one, a green, a white, and a blue, and put it right into the battlefield. So that was pretty crazy, especially at the time.
Yeah, it
But
made her very optimized for a strategy
exactly.
that puts out cards that make things cost more. Basically, like your Thalias, your Lodestone Golems, things like that that just add an extra cost, right?
Oh, exactly. And then with that, with stacks, you got stuff like Winter Orb, uh,
Oh yeah.
Static Orb, Torpor Orb. You got stuff like Cursed Totem.
Yeah, it's a lot of resource denial. A lot of things that make your opponent's stuff stay tapped or don't untap,
Exactly.
so like
And
they can't use it.
exactly. And a lot of people don't like that play style, especially if they don't understand it and they don't understand how to counteract it.
Well,
I
it's almost
mean,
like people like playing the game,
yeah, exactly.
and a deck that says, "Hey, you can't play the game." That's amazing.
I mean, probably one of my most memorable stacks cards, and in my opinion, it probably should be in almost every white deck, and that'd be land tax. And for those that don't know what land tax is, it's a one white pip, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you if an opponent you controls more lands than you, you may search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Then shuffle.
That's very good ramp for white.
I mean, it's one of the very few ramp cards in white.
Yeah.
I mean, but you also got a bunch of other fun shit in stacks. You got Ghostly Prison. People can't attack you unless they pay for 2 for each attacking creature.
Yep. That whole package there, the that ghostly prison, the propaganda,
Oh my
and
god.
like the sphere of safety. So those all do basically the same thing with each other, pretty much. Like, yeah, ghostly prison is 2, propaganda is 2, and then the shield is also like I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank there. It's X, where X is the number of enchantments you control.
Yes.
So like
The
you play
Sphere of
all three of
Safety there.
those. Yeah, sphere of safety. Yep, thank you. So yeah, you play all three of those, and now it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the sphere of safety makes it another 3. So that's 7 mana. Yeah, 7 mana your opponent would have to pay just to attack you with one creature.
Oh yeah, it gets
How great is that?
insane. And especially for those that don't understand it, what they're playing against, it can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's annoying when your opponent goes to you and says, "Oh, you have to pay 3 more for that."
I mean, then with that, I ended up after I started learning my love for stacks and whatnot, I started looking into some other ways of affecting the battlefield, and I built my Mogus God of Slaughter deck. It was my first foray into the red color on the color pie, and that deck was mean. It was mean as all hell, and I didn't even have to bring out Mogus to do anything, and it was pretty much mana barbs,
Yep.
sulfuric vortex, and the like. Of anytime anyone wanted to do anything, you're taking damage. And for that deck, Mana Barbs was really the core, along with Zozu Punisher. Um, then I had cards like Rakdos Charm in there and the Great Merchant of Asphodel, um, Heartless Hitijitsu, cards like that with Karavek the Merciless. And at the end of the day, that deck is just mean. People don't like playing with it, they don't like playing against it. And it's one of those decks where you really got to think about what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just going to end up hurting yourself more than you're hurting anyone else.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of group hug, like a deck that wants to help everybody. That's usually something along the lines of like a group slug, kind of, where it's like, oh, I'm going to give you mana, but now you're going to get pinged for it every time. So it's punishment decks can be tough. I know my Solfim deck, that new red Phyrexian guy that came out with Alby one, who doubles non-combat damage.
Oh yeah.
In that mono red deck, I put a lot of those effects into the one that I have there, where it basically just does all of that as well, with Solfim doubling it every single time. So Sozu, like you mentioned, whenever a land comes in to play, Sozu does 2 damage to that controller of that land. Well, with Solfim now it's doing 4 damage, and that quickly ramps up as the game goes on. It'll just, I've played games where I put Solfim in a pod of like 4 or 5 people, and before you know it, by turn maybe 6 or 7, everyone's down to 15, 10 life just off that alone.
Oh, exactly. And so as we're talking about some of these sets that came out this past year, I mean, from 2022 to 2023, I mean, just recently in general, we've had an influx of sets every single year. And some people think that Magic and Wizards are pushing these sets out too much and causing a influx of product into the marketplace. I, on the other hand, I kind of believe that it's a good thing. You're getting more
Mm,
cards for Commander. I mean, yeah, you don't have to go out and buy every single set. It doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of sets that fell very short of my expectations in this past year.
yeah,
I mean, we'll start with in the fall of 2022, we had Dominaria United and Brothers War both
those are
releasing.
phenomenal.
Both of them were great sets. Then that winter, I want to say it came out in February of 2023. We had Phyrexia all be one. I mean, we went back to Phyrexia.
Yeah, like everything and everything Phyrexia, I'm all about it.
I mean,
I love the Phyrexian, I love the Infect, I love the oil and artifacts. That
oh
stuff
yeah.
is that was one of my favorite sets. I love that.
I mean, they probably had some of the coolest special edition cards that I've seen in a
Yeah.
long time.
Well, the
And then,
artwork on some of those was also just incredible.
oh, it was absolutely gorgeous. As a collector and as someone who enjoys art, that set was
Yeah.
everything I could have asked for. And then that spring, we got March of the Machine and March of the Machine Aftermath. And I'll be honest, with the exception of a few cards and a few new commander options, like those dual commanders that came out,
Yeah.
both of those were a very underwhelming set in my mind. I mean, you definitely had the dual commanders that came out. That was kind of cool to see some of our favorite commanders and our favorite characters combine and team up together to fight off the Thoraxians. Especially, you got cards like Thalion and Gitrog Monster.
I mean, that's just badass, though. You got
Yeah,
Thalia riding on a giant frog into battle. I mean, come on. That's pretty
exactly.
awesome.
It was pretty freaking cool. Some of the stuff that we got there. I mean, in terms of a story, it was like freaking Endgame style levels for the Magic
Oh, exactly.
universe. I mean, Galta and Maverin. I mean, Hijitsu and Carrie. Then you got some of the main characters turning to Phyrexia. I mean, you got Nissa turning into
Yeah.
a Phyrexian. You got Nissa and a Johnny. All those guys
Ajani was one
turning.
all along. Like that
Yeah,
was the biggest thing right
exactly.
there. Is like, hey, spoiler, Ajani's been a sleeper agent for Phyrexia the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely insane type of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and they also brought a new card type in that set with battles. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that
Well, battles were interesting. I haven't actually seen many people use them in our commander format. Really, like I don't think anybody in my play group has actually even started using battles.
no, I mean, I've put one or two into a deck, and I've yet to actually be able to cast it with the right
Yeah.
timing because some of them add some interesting effects to the battlefield. I kind of look at battles similarly. Oh wow, similarly to how planes chases and the different
Okay.
planes and the effects that they happen on the field. But I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that you can like that you put them into play on your opponent's field and then you attack into them
yeah,
to get their
exactly.
effect. It's very interesting.
It's a new format, or it's a new card type. I honestly don't know if they're going to keep doing that card type. I don't see them doing it. I haven't seen them do it in past few sets. So I think it might have
No,
been a
I don't
one
think so.
off.
Yeah,
But then after March of the Machine, you had Wilds of Eldraine. So we finally went back to Eldraine, and the set was interesting to say the least. I personally
I mean, you
like
saw
the
that trailer though, right?
which one?
The trailer for that with the gingerbread
Oh my
people and
god.
Garuk. I mean, of all the trailers to have for a card game of all things, like that was if for anyone listening, if you haven't actually seen the trailer for Wilds of Eldraine with these two gingerbread people and Garuk just coming in, barreling into the room, check it out. It's wild. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that commercial is pretty good. Personally, for me, I love the fantasy mythology style stuff.
Yeah,
So I've always enjoyed the Plane of Eldraine. Um, you got some cool new cards in that set, but the big thing out of that set is we got a gentleman by what the hell is his name? Kellen. Kellen came out, and Kellen seems to be almost like the new Jace. He's traveling to all the planes. He's been in every single set that's released after Eldraine. And ever since March of the Machine, they haven't been able to planes chase anymore. And they haven't been able to jump. Somehow, this little kid is able to travel to different planes. I believe he is what the hell is that fairy's name from the first set of Eldraine that got
he's
banned?
the son of Oko.
Yeah, that's what it was. And it's fairly interesting. I mean, in Eldraine, we got some nifty Warlock cards for commanders. We got cards like Arietta of the Charmed Apple, Hilda of the Icy Crown, Agatha of the Vile Cauldron. So we got some interesting cards here. My personal two favorites of that set were Arietta and Hilda. They are very interesting cards. For those that haven't read them, Arietta is each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or a planeswalker you control. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of auras you control. Obviously, that would be a very enchantment centric deck. And for my stacks lovers out there, Hilda the Icy Crown, she screams stacks to me. Whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you may pay one. When you do, choose one. Create a 4/4 white and blue elemental creature token. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, or scry 2 and draw a card. That's pretty crazy if you have ways to tap opponent's creatures. But after Wilds of
Which there are
Eldraine,
plenty.
oh my god, yeah. After Wilds of Eldraine, you had the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I was super, super pumped for this set, and we got the Jurassic World collection out of it. Probably one of my all-time favorite movie franchises. We got to see the return of Galta, Huatli, Saheeli was back, as well as we found out about some gods of Ixalan, which was interesting to say the least. Kellen was back as well, and the set did a lot for Commander in terms of um,
It
synergies.
offered a lot. Yeah,
I mean, you got more pirates, you got more dinosaurs, you got more vampires.
I was very excited to see more pirates because I tried to build an old Admiral Beckett Brass deck with the first Ixalan, and it just wasn't good.
No,
You know, like even with the pirates we got in that first set, it wasn't enough to make a pirate deck really viable. Like and just very as like the most casual of game matches as you could have with a group of friends at the kitchen table. You could maybe get pirates to do some stuff. I don't know if it would. As far as I saw with my deck, it never really won that often, but it was okay. But now with the new pirates and the new Beckett Brass with the precon, even
Oh my
now it's
god.
like okay, well now we can do pirates all the live long day. You know?
Yeah, I mean, out of that set, I think out of the 3 or 4 most prominent tribes, or Christ, I don't even think they're calling them tribes anymore. For sake of simplicity, we're just going to call them tribes on our podcast here. Um,
Well, tribal was another topic that I think we're gonna touch on at some point for like just deck archetypes
oh yeah,
in general.
I mean, you got
As like
dinosaur, merfolk, vampire, pirates,
oh, so many
fungus,
slivers.
gnome. You got all this crazy shit, and we're missing one major release from last year,
Hmm.
and in my opinion, it was the best set of the year. And we got the Universes Beyond Lord of the Rings set. And
Yeah, that's the Universes Beyond is a pretty wild mixing pot of some people love it, some people hate it. It's
I mean, I know for me personally, I got to see some of my all time favorite literary characters fleshed out into the card game that I love. Granted, I
it
was
is pretty
disappointed in
fantastic.
some choices that they made, but all in all, I think this was the best set of the year in terms of the amount of commanders that made available. Whether you like Universes Beyond or not, the legendary creatures that this set had, there was, I want to say, like almost 100 different creatures that you can make into a commander, which is absolutely insane.
They
Granted,
were
not
pretty fan.
granted, not all of them were high ranking cards. Some were uncommons, some were rare, some were mythic rares. But that set brought you cards like Sauron the Dark Lord, Aragon the Uniter, Tom Bombadil,
Yeah, and
Smeagol
like
had a card.
Spiegel had many cards.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like they gave Schmiegel got a lot of cards. Frodo had a few, and like I think it was cool how with their different card iterations they showed kind of their journey
Oh, without a doubt.
along the way. Like it was pretty cool to see Frodo going from like I think he had like a mono white version, and then he had like a white black version
Yeah, kind of
down the road.
symbolizing once he got the ring and all that.
Right, like once he got to Mordor, he was like, maybe I want to keep this.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the coolest things out of that set was we got some more spider support for the spider tribe with Shelob. And
Yeah, I built a deck for that on Arena.
yeah,
It's
it
pretty terrible, but it's really fun.
like I haven't seen a true spider support in a long time.
Not
And it
since
was,
Ishkana.
yeah, so it was kind of cool that they brought it back and they gave us that option. And I mean, this year of 2024, we're getting some really freaking cool sets that I'm fairly excited for. I mean, we already saw Ravnica Remastered.
Yep,
Karlov
loved
Manor.
Ravnica.
Oh, yeah. Karlov Manor just came out. It's been getting some fairly bad reviews that I've been seeing personally.
Yeah, it
I'm,
was a kind of a tough one. Their clue iteration with it was kind of rough, and a lot of the commanders I've seen for it have been. I mean, the precons didn't really strike me as anything too great.
no, they had some interesting cards in there, but it certainly was the set that I was least excited for this coming year. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, there are definitely some good reprints in those precons. I don't know if you watched the latest for the professor there with the Tolarian Community College, which I absolutely love that guy. I watch all his stuff when he comes out with new content. I love that guy.
oh yeah, he's
But
phenomenal.
yeah, he released a video going over, the precons and their prices and if they're worth it. And there were some really banger reprints in these commander decks. To note there, I highly recommend going to check it out. I can't remember every single one off the top of my head here, but for the prices that those decks are, there's some really solid stuff that they're putting into these decks, which is a good sign. We've
Oh,
been waiting and dying for reprints in these precons forever.
oh, without a doubt. And that goes along the lines of what we were saying earlier about these decks and these precons. The power level just keeps increasing with every set that they release.
Oh yeah, they're a
Those
great way
decks,
for new people to get into it.
yeah. And you could sit down with a precon now and actually compete with
Yep.
someone that has a somewhat tuned deck. So
Oh yeah.
it's definitely nice because you can go pick up a precon at your local game store and sit down on a Friday night or Saturday night or whenever your store has their local commander night, and you can play, and you're not going to get beat up by other decks unless they're playing CEDH decks and they're just dicks like that. But
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's that like that Rule Zero or like conversation that has been coming out in the commander community that a lot of us do nowadays. I think where you kind of just sit down and you talk about what deck you want to play, and for me, if I see somebody come to the table and they say, "Oh, I have a precon," then I know I'm not going to play my elf deck on them. I'm not going to play slivers against them. I'm going to pull out one of my fun decks. That's, I mean, I have that Optimus Prime deck I just built.
oh yeah,
So I'm going to play Optimus Prime vehicles and just say, Autobots roll out. Let's see what you got, and just have fun with it.
exactly. And going back to the release schedule for this year, I mean, next month we got another Universes Beyond coming out with the Fallout Commander decks, and
Yeah, those are interesting. I like the energy one.
yes,
I might try to snag that. I like the Brotherhood of Steel with Madison Lee.
like I'm really excited to see Energy make a return. I thought it was a very underused mechanic,
Yes.
and I always wanted to try and make an Energy deck, but there just wasn't enough support for it. And I'm hoping that with this deck that's coming out, we might start seeing some more Energy style stuff. But you never know anymore with Wizards. But after Fallout comes out next month, we got a set that I'm actually very excited for, and we have Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and we got some very interesting commander decks that were just leaked, and I just saw these this morning that the packaging was just leaked. We have Quick Draw, which is an Izzet deck, and it looks like it's going to be a Spellslinger deck.
That would be phenomenal. I've always loved spell slingers.
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, you got Quick Draw, which is the Spellslinger deck. Then it looks like you have Desert Bloom, which is going to be a Lands Matter deck from the looks of it.
It seems like, yeah, on the thing there says discard lands and then grow them back. So it looks like it could have some kind of land graveyard synergy, which is interesting.
Oh, yes. And that might help out one of the newer commanders from the past couple of years, Hazaret, with desert
Hmm.
style stuff.
Oh, maybe they might be adding some new deserts into this one. Because if it's like an old out western style, then I could see them adding some new, like,
Desert
American
centric
deserts into
cards.
there, like a desert of the Sahara or something like that, or some
Exactly.
kind of out west
And then you
stuff. That
also,
could be cool.
yeah, so it could be fairly interesting for the format here, adding some new land, more land types of an old land. Then you got Grand Larceny, which looks like just another generic steal your shit deck. Um,
Which the colors for these are interesting because, like, for the Desert
yeah,
Bloom, they got Naya, which is red, green, white, which I wouldn't really think to expect for discarding land graveyard synergy, which is very interesting.
yeah,
And then
not at all.
Sultai for that other one, which Sultai is black, green, blue for stealing stuff. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and then the last one you got Most Wanted, which is a
Yep.
Mardu deck.
Yep.
And the thing I have here, I don't have a very good image, so I can't read what the hell it says.
Says earn treasure and buy outlaws.
Okay.
So, oh, okay. I think I have a good idea of what this could be. Then it could likely be like predictions all the way around. We have no idea what these actually could be, but 100% prediction here. If it's earning treasure and buying outlaws, I'm thinking something of a political style. Because as we
Oh,
know,
that could be fun.
politics is a whole thing here, which I think in one of our future episodes we'll go into like what is politics and how you can politic the table because it's a whole can of worms in that regard. But I could see this deck having a lot of things like there's one card they might reprint into it called Tempting Contract, which I think it's beginning of your end step or beginning of your I think it's end step where you can let your opponents gain treasure, but then for each opponent that takes a treasure token, you get an extra treasure token as the controller of the contract. So
That
like you can help your opponents, but then you're ultimately going to be the one that gets the most benefit from it.
that could certainly be an interesting deck. I'm interested to see as these spoilers come out for Thunder Junction
Yeah.
what we're actually going to be getting. Then after Thunder Junction, at some point in quarter 2, Modern Horizons 3 will be coming out.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, right. Another $200 set here.
Yeah, that's we can go into that one
Yeah.
later on too down the road. That'll be something else.
Then you got Universes Beyond Assassin's Creed, which from the looks of it is going to be a smaller set, probably in vain to like how they did. Crap. What was one of the other? It,
Oh, the Transformers one was kind of
yeah,
small.
yeah. It'll probably be similar to the Transformers. I don't have much information, and I haven't really looked into it too much. It's definitely a UB set though. And
Yeah.
then in quarter 3, which is this summer, we're gonna get Blueborough, which seems very interesting. From the looks of it that I've been reading, it is essentially going to be a set focused on a plane where humans don't exist, and you
Oh
have
yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
yeah, you're going to have anamorphic creatures like rabbits that are standing up talking and whatnot. And the last set of the year looks like it's going to be Duskmorn, House of Horror, and that should be coming out just around Halloween, I believe. And Halloween or a little bit after. We don't have much information on that set yet, but I'm fairly interested to see what they're going to do with it. Maybe they're going to bring back some of these dark, scary creatures. One can only hope. So, John, why don't you, or Jack, why don't you tell everyone what we're planning for the first few episodes here? What is our
Gladly.
goal going to be?
So we're upcoming, brand new Magic the Gathering podcasters. We're kind of new to this whole thing, and we've been inspired by a lot of others. Like the professor with the Tolarian community. Command Zone is one of our biggest inspirations. Absolutely love those guys. And so, we're kind of taking a page from the book there. We're going to be going over, deck building strategies. We'll do a color pie in depth analysis, pretty much look over each color, what they mean, what they do, and really just give, in like our first few episodes here, give like tips and tricks for any new players on how to get their decks built and optimized and not so much a CEDH level, right? Like we're not looking to be competitive, crazy players here. I mean, there are sure some things I can go into to get into that, but we're mostly just looking to have a good time and make sure everyone at the table has fun, which at the end of the day is really what it's all about
Yeah,
for
so
a great game like this.
I think our main goal is we want to be able to help you one learn the game of Magic and learn how to successfully build decks. And we're not necessarily going to say we're budget builders or anything like that because I'm sure we'll have some cards that are on the pricier end for some people that me and Jack might have in our binders that we need to get rid of and we want to use in a deck. But we're also not going to be going out there making $2,000 decks and
Yeah,
showing
no,
people how to do
absolutely not.
that.
At
And
most, I've probably spent maybe 200 to 300 on a deck, but like we can focus on budget for sure.
oh, exactly. And we're going to be going around. We'll do some brief talks of new sets coming out when they release and as spoiler season comes around. And we'll go through and we'll build decks and we'll talk through our inspirations on why we're choosing certain cards and whatnot. But I think the biggest thing for us is we're going to talk to you like me and Jack are just talking with each other right now. We're going to sit here, BS, talk about our favorite game that we love, and we're going to have fun doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, just two guys chatting about a game they love and hanging out with y'all, just as simple and casual as we can be.
So, along with that, we're going to hope to start by releasing one episode every other week. As we get going, there might be weeks where we release one episode every week. We're going to try and release them on Mondays. If anyone has any suggestions for us on what they want to see us cover, maybe a commander they want to see us build, a mechanic that they don't understand,
Oh, absolutely.
shoot us a message on Facebook or our Instagram page, and we'll do our best to accommodate and help you out. For with that, we're going to sign off now. We want to thank everyone for listening, and we hope to hear you guys in future episodes. Jack, I'll let you close it out this episode.
All right, take care, everybody. It's been nice here. We'll definitely be back soon with some more hot takes and updates on all the latest and greatest in the Magic the Gathering community. Take care,
All
y'all.
right. Thanks, all.